Hi, I'm Dale Holliday, coming to you from Corvallis, Oregon, in the bountiful Willamette Valley. Welcome to my show, Valley Views. It's a forum for sharing relevant topics relating to people and issues in the Willamette region. On Saturday, August 12th, 2017, right-thinking people gathered in Charlottesville, Virginia, to counter-protest a white nationalist rally. These white supremacists, I'll refer to them as terrorists, were angry because of the city's plan to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee. A young woman was killed and over 20 people were injured when one of these terrorists decided to plow his car into a group of counter-protesters. I'm not going to go into details, my reactions, or my thoughts about this particular incident. Believe me, there will be many opportunities on my show dealing with race and race relations in America because it affects all of us, even here in little old, predominantly white Willamette Valley. And just FYI, I am a woman of African, Native American, and European descent. And I am identified by most folks in the U.S. as Black, because so many of them fail to realize that Black folks in this country are a mix of ethnicities, so-called mutts, just like the white folks. But that too is another show. But because I am identified as Black, I'm therefore treated as Black, so the topic of race will not be a stranger to this show. That said, I had an extraordinary interaction at my local gym the Sunday morning after this terrorist attack in Charlottesville, Virginia. One of the trainers there, who I've always had friendly interactions with, greeted me as usual. I'll call him Tony, not his real name. Tony is a white guy in his 20s. Young guy. He came over and I could tell he was distressed about something. And he said, "I'm sure you've heard about what happened in Charlottesville. I'm just sick about it. I don't want this to sound strange, and I hope it doesn't offend you, but I just don't know what to do. I want you to know that I don't agree with those racists, and I want to support you. I want you to know that I've got your back, but I just don't know what to do." Well, the first thing I did was tell him that, believe it or not, he was not the first white person to ever say such a thing to me. It certainly doesn't happen every day, but he was perhaps the fourth or fifth white person during my lifetime who's come up to me to say that they were ashamed of how certain white people were acting and just didn't want to be associated with them or their actions. But they felt helpless about what to do. 3 of those white people were complete strangers to me. I told Tony what I've told the others in the past. I told him to talk to his white friends, relatives, and coworkers about race. Tell them what he just told me. Challenge and correct them when they say something racist or, no pun intended, off color. You can say, "I don't agree," or "That's wrong. That's a racist thing to say," or "That has not been my experience." Then just let your statement hang there in the air until they respond. And don't feel you need to wait until somebody says something wrong. Be proactive. Take the initiative and talk to them about race. You talk with them about everything else under the sun over coffee or when you're out jogging, going to yard sales, just doing your thing, going about your daily life. Be prepared to lose friends and have relatives stop inviting you to family gatherings. Also, be prepared to make new friends and to cultivate deeper, more meaningful relationships. Your life will actually improve as you grow. Why did I advise Tony to do this? Because white people just don't talk about race. Because they don't have to. Black people talk about it all the time, or at least are painfully aware of the topic because it gets thrown in our faces on a daily basis. On the job, in the media, in the movies, at the sales counter, at the airport, Wherever we go, it goes. And it's ugly, dispiriting, rage-producing, disorienting, and yes, uncomfortable, to put it mildly. White people want to avoid that discomfort, and that's why we are still having the racial tensions and violence today that we've had since my African ancestors were brought here and changed, not that many years ago on a generational clock. As Tony and I were talking, a white man in his early 60s walked by, gave us the thumbs up, and said, "Great conversation." I'll get to him later. Tony and I finished our talk. I could tell he was taking it in. He was off on his way to church, and I told him, "Talk to members of your congregation." What's more, he attends a church with some members of the local NAACP, so I encouraged him to have this conversation with them. He gave me a hug, and we parted ways. The fellow that had walked by earlier and commented on our great conversation was still at the gym. I walked over to him and told him that I had appreciated his comment and essentially gave him a recap of what I'd told Tony. Because personally, I figured, guy, it's not enough to just walk by and commend us. You have to do your part too. He took my advice well. Said he'd been having those conversations with his relatives, friends, and coworkers to the point that some of them don't want to talk with him anymore. I told him if they reacted that way, he's probably saying the right things. Now, I don't know if this guy was being honest or if he really was having these conversations, what he was saying, or how effective it was. I had no reason to disbelieve him, but who knows what gets said in these situations. He then said that he'd be retiring soon and that, quote, Portugal looked pretty good. My immediate response was, well, since most of us can't afford to retire to Portugal and have to remain in this country, including many of the white people you've been talking to, it wouldn't hurt to keep talking to them because we have to remain in this environment together. I had to say what I said because white flight from the racism in this country to Canada, Europe, or wherever else on the globe, whatever, does absolutely nothing to address the cancer of racism here, where the lion's share of us have to remain. Isn't that the problem in the first place? Not wanting to acknowledge or talk about it? So folks, that's my story. White people, don't let your fear of disapproval or rejection by your peers stand in your way against combating racism and racist remarks. If you think you don't know enough about the subject and feel like you don't know any people of color to advise you, at the very least, read a book. We have a very good library system here in the Willamette Valley and also the Oregon State University Library. Go online. There's tons of info. Don't think that you need to become an expert before moving forward. This is a pre-recorded show, so I can't take calls, but I'd love to hear your feedback, personal experiences, and comments, especially from my neighbors in the Willamette Valley. You can send your thoughts to me at valleyviews360@gmail.com. VALLEYVIEWS360@gmail.com. Thank you. You've been listening to Valley Views. I'm your host, Dale Holliday, and I'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, ideas for future topics, or other matters you'd like explored. Email me at valleyviews360@gmail.com. That's VALLEYVIEWS360@gmail.com. This show is produced at Corvallis Access Media with special thanks to Chad Howard. In the Willamette Valley, you can find KBOO at 104.3 FM on your radio dial. I look forward to being with you again next Friday. And remember, as Doctor Who once said, I'm not in charge, but I'm full of ideas. Bye-bye.